tonight on Addiction Talk.
From childhood trauma to international fame, Mike Diamond seemed to have it all. TV stardom, a thriving entertainment career, even a role on Sex and the City. But behind the spotlight, he was battling an addiction that started at just 12 years old. At the height of success, Mike faced an unthinkable choice: keep using and possibly lose it all, or fight for his life. Now 19 years sober and a celebrity interventionist on A&E's Intervention, Mike is on a mission to save others from the darkness he once knew. His story is raw, inspiring, and proof that it's never too late to change your life. Addiction Talk starts now. And welcome to Addiction Talk. Mike, you are joining us live from Desert Hope Treatment Center, where you're in Las Vegas, impacting lives. I know we've seen you on the show, but now you're actually at a treatment center, hands-on with patients who are there. What's that been like to go from TV to actually being in a treatment center, working directly with patients?
You know, it's a really interesting thing, Joy. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. And I kind of knew the transition was coming because I'd worked in, the private sector for like 10 years in Los Angeles and traveled around. And I said to my wife, I think it gets a little lonely when you just work one-on-one with people. And I've got a big personality and a lot of contacts, and I like to be around people. And when the opportunity came to kind of collaborate with everyone, it was the right transition for me because, from working with one, like say high-end celebrity, like I've done so many celebrity stuff, I'm just with that celebrity. Like I'm one-on-one with that celebrity. Maybe I do the intervention, I get them into treatment, or sometimes I have to set up personal care around their schedule, and it's one-on-one. And when I'm like that, I can only have a couple of clients because sometimes I'm 24/7 with a celebrity. So to be around, a whole group of people interacting with different personalities, being in the center, and if people are struggling, having the ability to have an office, sit them down, talk them through, maybe a detox, which I've done so many individual detoxes, but actually sit down and talk them through, talk to case managers, and talk to, the different counselors. I like it. I like people. So it's been really amazing and I felt at home from our first meeting when I met you in the office. It was a really good synergy straight away. So it's been really cool.
Mm-hmm. And when I think about you, Mike, I remember from my first interaction with you, you are just an inspirational person who has excelled in spite of the odds of your life or the things that you've been through. And I want to know, and I know a lot of people want to know, they may have seen you on the show Intervention, but how do you go from a young boy who has a dream to come to America and to do great things? How do you go from that to being where you are today? And even in the middle of it all, struggling at some points with addiction?
Well, that's a great question. So I always say it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, but there's a little trick to life. So I don't think I was a very good athlete as a child, and I discovered something by chance. And I always say preparation meets opportunity is luck. I have a lot of courage. Like I've always been very courageous as a young kid. That's just something that's in my DNA. I will get up and I have no problems putting myself out there. So it really started, I was a really good athlete and I thought that would be my thing, maybe go and play Australian rules football professionally later in life. And I was in a play and I was in the chorus because I never wanted to do that. I was 11 years old. And I didn't know I was undiagnosed with dyslexia. I found out years later with my ADHD and dyslexia. So I always had trouble reading and that stuff, but I'm photographic visually. If I see it, I remember it. And two or 3 days before the play was supposed to go on, two of the main leads got the flu really bad. And the track coach was the one running the play. And she said, we can't do the play. But what they didn't know is I was in the chorus with this other guy, and every time everyone would get up to sing and perform, I would mimic them and mock them. And I remembered the whole play back to front by watching it. So he ratted me out and he said, no, Mike knows the parts. And I couldn't lie to her because she was so awesome, the track coach. I loved her. Her name was Miss Plummer. And she said, do you really know the parts? I'm like, yeah. She goes, could you get up and sing one of the songs? I said, yeah, no problem. I got up and sang the song. She goes, you remember the lines? I said, I'll jump straight in the scene. Now, I didn't know that that is someone's fear, to get public speak, singing. I wasn't afraid of it. So she said, do you want to play in the role? I said, yeah, this is easy. So opening night, and we played 3 nights. It was like 400 people. And I had no problem getting up, and I loved it. And I'm like, oh, that's my way out of Perth. I've got something that other people don't have. So I followed that. That was the universe telling me, you can do this. And then what happened is I went through a lot of issues with trauma, addiction. I moved from Perth to Sydney, went to acting school, and I followed that. I'm like, I know I can act, so I'm just going to follow that. And then I'm going to compound on that. And that's how I got to America. It was just following that hunch and my intuition. And then I would get these little signs, back then that, you had to lie. I landed in Miami first. I knew no one. I didn't have one contact. I came to America with no contacts. I packed up my life at 23 and said, I'm going to bet on myself because no one believes in me and bets on me. And I just always back myself. I believe in myself. If no one's going to believe in me, I want to believe in myself. And I've always had that inner. I watch stuff like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I go, first of all, the guy lifted weights. He can barely speak. He sounds like a Neanderthal. And how did he make it in America? So that's what I watch. I like, if he can make it, why can't I make it? I'm that simple.
And he was mayor.
California.
Yeah.
California. That's so that when I watch people like Stallone, and I'm like, well, they can make it in America. So that's where, and I just work. I have this ability to get with my ADHD, hyper focus. I see patterns, and I've got no fear of working. I don't have any, I just go into it. So I think because I have that drive, I told my agent, I fired my agent, got a book deal without my agent. It's a true story. I got a book deal, right? I fired my agent, big agent, and I messaged a guy called Bill Gladstone who just passed away, and I wrote him an email. I had written a proposal, written a book, and I knew he was the agent for Eckhart Tolle, and I love Eckhart Tolle. And I said to him, he goes, I don't check my emails, don't send me anything. And I literally said, you need to read my proposal. It's amazing. You will love it. And I know you don't check your emails. You need to check this email. He checked the email, read my book proposal, called me and said, I read the proposal. If the book's good, I'll get you a book deal. And I already had lined up all the publishers I wanted to deal with. He called around 3 publishers, called the publisher I liked, and got me a book deal. I called back the agent that I fired. I even said to the agent, get me on A&E. I should be on intervention. He couldn't get me on. And a friend of mine called me, and I was helping him out. And I asked him about another friend of mine from years ago, from friends from New York. And he became the new producer. And I said, just get me in front of the network. And Amira, who you met, casted me. She met me and she's like, oh yeah, he'll be great. And that's how I casted. I do not let anyone tell me my journey. I write my own movie every day. I let God as the director, and God intuitively tells me what to do, and I trust the process.
I love that. But you know what? Many people may be wondering, we hear you and you've had this drive, since you were a young boy.
5 years old.
You've had this. So how did the addiction come into play? How did someone who's so driven, knows where they're headed, made it all the way to, the United States, had these big dreams, every dream that you've ever wanted pretty much coming to pass. So how did the addiction begin to play a role in your life? And when was the open door?
Open door was when my grandmother got me drunk at 4 years old, and basically nearly killed me, and I was blamed for it. And my older brother was sick with measles encephalitis. And my sister was 13 weeks premature. And, my dad worked hard, but unfortunately I was his punching bag. So there was so much abuse and so much chaos, and there was never a safe place for me to ever feel safe and loved. No one ever told me they'd love me. So, at 12 years old, when you drink alcohol and you feel normal and you can regulate yourself and no one, I mean, it was just safe. When you can't trust people in your environment, alcohol and drugs are unconditional. They never say no. So, it helped me for a long time. It helped me deal with a lot of things and and cope. And it was really, really, really hard. But, you know, I never knew how progressive the disease was. I never understood how progressive the disease was. So I just kept using and using and using. And then I had that moment, the epiphany in 2006, April 16th, 2006. I just celebrated 19 years, where I was with the singer for the band, Velvet and Stone Temple Pilots, and we were shooting a VH1 pilot, and it was called Dive. And I was living a very debaucherous life, and his wife and kids were leaving at the time. And I just sat with myself, and I remember being in the Four Seasons and coming down the stairs and getting in a cab, and I was like, this is it, I'm done. And I just never, it was time to move on, it was time to, I was done. I was totally done.
Mhm. Wow, when I think about that, the fact that at 4 years old, you're
Yeah.
introduced to alcohol, then this goes on to be something that becomes a coping mechanism. Like you said, for a lot of people, it starts with the trauma.
Yep.
There's a traumatic experience or something that happens, and alcohol or drugs end up being that coping mechanism.
Yep.
When did it start to escalate? When did you find, I know you said you realized that you were dealing with this. Was there a point that you realized that it was out of control and you needed to stop? Did you have kind of like that escalation rock bottom moment?
No, I grew up drinking. Like, we grew up in Australia drinking and going. I was drinking with men at 15 years old in bars. Like, it was just chaotic. It was work hard, play hard. So I had a very high bottom. I mean, I'll tell you a true story. When I owned a bar in New York City with the biggest band in the world, Scott Weiland and Duff McKagan and Brett Scallion from Fuel, I would be in there doing copious amounts of cocaine and talking to people about business deals, and the next day at 8 o'clock in the morning be in their offices doing cocaine and pitching deals and getting pilots. Like, that's what I was around. It was not like no one's told me to stop. I had one guy, a famous lawyer, come up to me, and we were doing cocaine, and he said to me, Mike, do you really think maybe one day, you'll stop doing drugs? And I thought he was going to like give me some inspiration. And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, what do I know? I'm doing cocaine with you. So no one actually
Mm.
intervened on me. I had to intervene on myself, because I just got to a point. I'm like, I realized I climbed the wrong mountain. That is not what success looked like. I shouldn't feel so empty with so much external validation. Does that make sense? I was chasing the high. I had destination disease. I arrived at the destination, but I didn't have any meaning and purpose in the daily movements and the journey. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get curious about this sobriety thing. I got sober the first time around 19, and I just could get away with drinking and doing cocaine, because it's kind of like that Darryl Strawberry thing where I was really talented.
Mhm.
But talent doesn't mean anything if you don't work and you're not a good person, a good human being. And because I never got, look, to this day, Joy, my parents will never read my books. My siblings don't celebrate me. They never tell me they love me.
Oh, wow.
And they talk to me for like 90 seconds on a Sunday. I
Mhm.
don't come from poverty. My parents had money, but they didn't give me anything.
Which
There
is
was so
so
many,
ironic because Mike, when you are like one of the most encouraging and
yeah.
loving people, to see out of that you became someone who now goes into helping other people and loving on other people and showing them there's a path forward. I think that's just a testament to how far you've come.
But you know why? I'll tell you why. Because I know what it feels like to not be loved. So when
Mm.
I see someone that's not loved, I go out of my way. I know what it feels like to when no one believes in you. So I believe in other people. I'm not like other people that take that pain and then put it out in the world. Why would I do that if someone's already in pain? It doesn't feel good. So I turn it. So to me, negativity and pain is protein to me. It builds me up to be a better person. So I focus on how. I remember watching a speech by Jim Valvano, and he has this great speech about his dad was always there for him. My dad never watched me run once in a running race. I run championships as a good little sprinter. And when I won, my mum called me a show off. And when I went home, so I would sit there on the dais winning and feel so much shame and guilt. And I'd see kids being celebrated for coming second and third going, wait, why aren't I celebrated? So the only way for me to feel any kind of feeling was to mess around with drugs and alcohol. It was safe. What if I'm going to be shamed for winning? Well, I've got no safe place, right? And the worst thing is, and I've passed on, is I watched Jim Valvano say his dad always believed in him, so he believes in others. And I said, well, my dad never believed in me. My mum never believed in me, so I'm going to believe in others because I don't want anyone to suffer like I suffered. And that's why I do the work I do. It's not about money. I always say if the cause is right, the effect is money. I can go and do TV shows. I can do cool stuff. People can overpay me to be an idiot. I mean, the world's full of that. But that's not about it. It has to be meaningful in me. Because I
Well,
can always go and sell my soul. Sorry, go.
no, I think that's so huge. But the fact that you even had so much wisdom to say to yourself, this is not how I want to live. This is not how I want my life to be. And I'm going to change that. How hard was that for you? Was it just when you made the decision, it was just making that decision, you were able to move into it? Or was it really, really challenging to get yourself to that point, even though you know you should?
You know what it is? It's intuition. I've always had very good intuition. And sometimes, how did you learn to move past the trauma in order to turn into a healing? That's a great question, Sarah. Can I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Sarah. So there's a thing with trauma and healing, and it stays in the body, and you have to sit in it. You can't run from trauma, and you can't heal yourself if you run. It's a process. I do a lot of breath work. I do a lot of deep yin yoga, which is restorative, and it works on the somatic parts of the body to help us restore and attacks the fascia tissue of the body. So you have to learn to move through the traumatic events. I would suggest you do deep somatic work, and you want to get either a cognitive behavioral therapist or a rational emotive behavioral therapist. Once you start to move the stuff, then you want to cognitively work through the process to reframe your perspective. There's an incredible book I would suggest reading, and it is written by Viktor Frankl, the late psychiatrist. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. And there's another person
Repeat that again, what you said, Mike. What's the name of that?
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor
Man's
Frankl.
Search for Meaning. Okay.
Viktor Frankl was in 3 concentration camps. He lost his pregnant wife. She died in the concentration camps. He lost his father and his mother in the concentration camps, right? He always said, we cannot control what happens outside. We can only control our attitude and our response. And the one most important thing that we control when we're facing adversity is our attitude. So you don't have to relive that memory over and over again, right? It may be triggered because a lot of stuff stays in us, and sensory can trigger the event over and over again in the memory. But I've got very comfortable now knowing that my parents were abused and beaten down, and they didn't choose to heal themselves. So now I have a beautiful little son, and he has no trauma. And I look at my son and I give him what I needed. So I make sure I don't download that trauma, and I'm a transitional character. I broke the generational curse because all the lineage behind generation after generation after generation were traumatized. Is it a lot of work? Absolutely. But there are tools, breath work, making sure you do cognitive behavioral therapy or rational emotive behavioral therapy, journaling, reading inspiring stories. We've all suffered. Everyone has suffered at different degrees, but you have to have agency and advocate for yourself. And you have to stay strong and say, I want to live my best life. And then daily, you have to practice rewriting your story.
Yes. And I think that
I want to go back to that because I think what you said is so powerful that you broke that. But I want to go back to that moment of change and making that decision. I know we answered the question, but I wanted to go back. Was it easy once you made up in your mind that this wasn't how I wanted my life to be, that something had to change? Or was it hard? Was it something that weighed on your mind that you really had to wrestle with?
No, I knew I had to change, but it's not easy. And I always say doing the easy thing, doing the easy thing isn't right. You know, doing the right thing isn't easy. It was very difficult because I had to look, I'm gonna be honest with you. You got to stop people pleasing. The only way I survived my environment was to people please because I was around such toxic, abusive people that I had to play a character and not be authentic, right? So if my dad abused me, I had to take it. I couldn't say to him, "What are you hitting me for? You don't hit my other siblings. Are you out of your mind?" I was a little kid. So as I got older, I started to set boundaries and say, "No, you can't talk to me like that. You can't treat me like that." And now here's the thing. When I was a people pleaser, what I would do is I would get frustrated instead of standing up for myself, thinking I may lose a job or an opportunity, especially in the entertainment business. You have to people please all the time. Then what would I do? I would do loads of cocaine to numb out. So once I stopped numbing out, I can't do this anymore. I can't live this lie. My intuition is telling me to go in this direction and stand up for myself and advocate for myself. But then everyone else is trying to pull me in another direction. But then you practice it and you lose a lot of friends, but they're not your real friends anyway. I lost acquaintances. I lost people that I thought were really. I had people that wanted me to be sick and drinking and out of my mind and doing business deals because they could extort me.
Mm. So
So,
literally, when you came and said, I'm not doing this anymore, this isn't my life,
yep,
people said, I can't associate with you.
cut me off.
Wow.
I lost TV deals. I was told if I didn't sell my soul and do this TV deal and be high on cocaine and drink myself to death, I would. They were like, get sober afterwards. You'll never work in TV again. I'm like, I'd rather not work in TV. I'd rather be sober.
It was that important to you.
Yeah, yeah. Once I realized I climbed the wrong mountain and it was just superficial crap. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is dumb. And now it's full circle. Now I take care of all the celebrities I used to throw events for. Ta-da! I guess God had a better plan.
Was there anyone, and you don't have to give us name, was there anyone who kind of abandoned you during that time that you've had to help since then?
Oh, well, here's funny. Wow. We actually, yeah, there is someone that just recently he extorted me in a lot of ways, and he needed help, and of course I'm loving and kind because that's the past. But yeah, it was an interesting full circle moment. He got really sick and he reached out to me, and I said, absolutely, I'll help you. And I kind of, look, I have to take responsibility for me, and it wasn't. I didn't have anyone advocating for me. I didn't have mentors. I had to figure it out myself. That's why I mentor so many people. It's very difficult. And yeah, I mean, I've got some. I've got an accent. I know how to talk. So it's not like I'm a minority with no resources. Even though I came here with nothing, I'm a resourceful guy. So I was still ahead of a lot of people. It was difficult. So um, I just had to let go. I forgive people. I just forgive people. And that doesn't mean I forget in the sense of, but I can't hold on to those resentments. They make me sick. Do you know what I mean? It's like if I just go, okay, that's just look. It's like I'm a cheerleader, and so are you. I'm what you call an engine. I drive people, inspire, educate, motivate people. I'm not an anchor. I don't pull you down. I do not sink you. I want to see everyone win. I get so much pleasure in watching people succeed. It my day. People ask me why I have so much energy and I don't stop. It's because I have purpose. Passion is a lie. Don't go for feeling. Be passionate about your purpose. If I can help you win and I can inspire you and I can bring you value and I can educate you and help you and coach you, oh my God, I have a full day. There's so many people I can help. So I wake up enthusiastic at 3:30 in the morning on fire because I'm like, there's so many people I can give these gifts to. So my
And
life is full.
you did hear that right, people. 3:30 in the morning is when Mike is waking up because, like you said, you have that passion and that purpose to
Yeah.
help people. Have you found that it's different? One question I wonder people may
No,
have,
got it.
working with celebrities who are struggling with addiction versus working with everyday people. Is it the same, or have you found that there have been differences in this field?
No, it's the same thing. I'll tell you this. I remember I had an argument with someone, and there was a transgender, so a transgender client, and they're like, can you work with them?" And I said, "Of course I can. Like, what's the difference?" I'm like, "Addiction doesn't discriminate."
Exactly. Yeah.
I said, "I work with everyone. Anyone sick and suffering that needs my help, I am there to advocate for them and show them the path. I can't carry people. I'm like a science project. I read, I study, I'm meticulous, I emulate, and I walk on the path. So I show people within the way they can accept their reality. This is the path. It works. I'm living proof. I came from nothing. I figure it out every day.
And you're
So,
19 years sober. I mean,
19 years. Yeah.
in the industry of entertainment where it's rampant.
And I worked in nightclubs for years sober. That's why when I'm in Vegas, everyone knows and I don't preach it, I practice it. There's a difference. It's attraction over promotion. Bosses are travel agents, right? They tell you where to go. A leader is a tour guide. They show you where to go. I show people. I'm not fancy. I don't know. When I do my morning rituals, I'm like, it's hard. I don't want to do it. I want to lay in bed like everyone else. I was honest. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Robert. I wish I could do cocaine and eat bad food and get away with, like, that's why these drugs are so addictive.
Right.
They're scary. I snorted cocaine once and I was addicted. That's it. It wasn't a negotiation. I took the cocaine and the cocaine took me.
And I think for a lot of people, that is the experience with some of these drugs, especially some of the drugs like fentanyl. They're so powerful
Yeah.
now. And the days of just experimenting are gone because sometimes you don't even know what you're taking. And
Yep.
people are finding more and more people are being addicted. So I want to talk a little bit about the 5 things you need to stay sober, because when people hear that you've made it to a milestone of 19 years, they're like, how do you do it? I'm just trying to get through day 1, which we know it's one day at a time. But still, I want to hear what were 5 things that you need in your life to be sober, to stay
Right.
sober.
Absolutely. So the first one is this, and it's very simple. You've got to be willing. You have to be willing to do the work, and you have to commit. Without willingness and commitment, you're never going to stay sober. So the first thing is you have to be honest with yourself. You have to look at yourself and realize, I don't drink like a normal person. I don't think anyone does cocaine like a normal person, but I'm like, my wife can drink. You could probably drink. You're a normie. I'm not. I do one. I want the line. So the first thing is I have to be willing. I have to surrender. The second thing is I need help. I have to ask for help. Now, I went into 12-step programs. If you're sick and suffering and you have someone that's willing, you call an interventionist like me, you go into a program. Okay. So you have to have someone else show you the way. You have to surrender. Like they say, it takes a village to make a champion. Now, once you commit, you're willing, and you get into a program. I went to 3 meetings a day, right? Then you have to get either a mentor or a sponsor or a sober coach, someone that has walked the path and has more experience than you, because you're new and you really don't know what you don't know. You're unconscious and you're incompetent. And then you become consciously incompetent. You're like, wow. So you need that mentor to become consciously competent. And then you always need those mentors. And then you become unconsciously competent. It's just second nature for me to get up at 3 in the morning. My body leads me before I think about it. I make good choices now, right? Because my body is programmed, right, to move in a certain way and do certain habits. Okay. So that was 3, correct? 4, you must have strict rituals and routines beyond just going to meetings. You have to look at your sobriety as wellness. Okay. I used to go to meetings and people would go to meetings and they would be like, I'm sober today. I'm like, you just ate 22 donuts and drank 5 cups of coffee and you're chain smoking. That's not wellness, because what we do to the body affects us and dysregulates us. And if we're dysregulated, we're going to be angry and we're always going to be edge. It's not just stopping and putting things down. It's working what we're putting back in. Okay. So you must get healthy. You must exercise. You must get a meditation. You must do some kind of stretching. You must eat clean. Okay. You have to get those things really structured, because if you're not, if your body's off, your mind is off. So it's a whole, it's spiritual wellness, yes, but it's physical and mental wellness. You need the all together. Then the fifth thing is you must find a purpose. You have to have a why and a purpose and meaning, because your purpose is your forward motivation. If you see it athletes all the time, right? They play with passion and they stop playing a sport, and what do they say? I don't know what to do after the game is
I don't know
gone.
who I am. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So I have this great story with people. There's this famous story, and it's three guys, and I kind of changed the story, and it's talking about these three guys working on a cathedral. And they say the one guy has a career, a job, the other guy has a career, and the other guy has a mission because he's building cathedral, right? And I'm like, I don't like that, because that's putting the purpose outside of yourself. I reframe the story and say this: there is three guys working on a cathedral, and a guy walks up to the first guy and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm a bricklayer. It's my job." He's like, "Cool." He goes over to the second guy. He goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm a bricklayer. It's my career." He goes, "Cool." He goes over to the third guy working on the cathedral. "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm a bricklayer. It's my calling. It's my
Mhm.
calling to use my hands and be of service to others and bring them value. And they pay me for what the value is. So I can build this cathedral. I could build a wall. I could build a road, because I know I'm very good with my hands. That's what I do." So once you know your purpose, right, and you learn the skills and you set goals and you have forward motivation, and you've got, you know how to regulate your sympathetic nervous system, okay? You've got the right mentor. We'll go backwards now, right? You got the right mentor. You've been in some kind of program, so now you've cleaned out, right? And you're willing. It's impossible to relapse, because you have five incredible tools that keep you grounded and present in the moment. So when information comes in, you know how to process it correctly.
But what, Mike, if somebody says, but Mike, you're so driven, it's like the way your mind thinks, I don't know that I could do all of that. That sounds like overwhelming. What would you say to someone who may have that feeling hearing all of that?
This is really simple. I break their day down and I realize they're spending major time on minor things and they want a major result. So I take their 24 hours and I do the 1% rule. What I do is like this: if you're in a boat and you know the target's ahead of you, okay, and say it's 60 miles away, if I move you 1%, 1 degree each side, you get off target. So I'll take small little habits. I'll give you a perfect example. I had this girl and I tricked her, and she said that it's impossible for her to ever, run a marathon. I'm like, that's not true. You need training. So what I did is every day I said, I want you to go outside and just walk for 10 minutes. And I want you to just mark how far you walked. So I knew after 2 weeks, 10 minutes was going to be easy and she'd naturally walk more. Within 2 months, she'd covered 26 miles. She didn't know that 26.2 miles was a marathon. So I said, did you know I tricked you? You walked the distance of a marathon in a couple of months. She's like, oh my God. The 1%, right? So what did she end up doing? She goes, I could run a marathon. I changed her perspective by giving her small, attainable goals. So I won't stack the whole buffet in front of you, right? I will take, let's substitute. Let's have an empowering and a disempowering and substitute them. Okay. So if someone wants to stop eating sugar, I don't cut all the sugar out. I'm like, let's take one thing at a time, like night. Let's not eat any sugar at night, but let's go for some sugar-free Jello. And I substitute. So over time, they build the habit, but they don't feel pressured.
Mm,
You know what I
I
mean?
like
That's how.
that. Because you are someone who's so driven and you are like a mentor to so many people and so inspirational. So I want to give people some last tips. I mean, you've
Okay.
already given us so much. We see how, you've gone through your life, how you have created systems and things to help you in your sobriety. But what would you say to someone? I know you said breaking it down. What would you say to someone would be the first step? If I'm looking at my life right now and I know that I'm struggling with addiction, what is my first step?
Well, the first step is you got to get for help. So we've got to get you either into a program or you got to go into AA meetings, depending. If you're using a street drug like fentanyl, you got to go into a treatment center. If you're doing a heavy street drug like meth, fentanyl, and anything like that, you're going to need a medical detox. You ain't coming off that stuff just by laying on your couch and thinking you're going to do it. So the first thing is to admit you got a problem and get into a center. Call someone like me if you need an intervention and you need advice and you need me to advocate for you and you need to work through insurance or resources. That's why I'm here. You call me, right? We get that. We get you clean first and we get you detox, because then you've got clarity of mind. Because a nose full of coke or other things and a stomach full of booze, you ain't thinking straight. So that's the first step. Just be willing to know that it's not going to get better. It doesn't get better. It doesn't get better when you use. It's just the way it is. Is it easy? Well, some days just okay. I always say this. I when I work with, and when we're in the center and people want to leave, I just sit them down and I say, okay, have you ever been on a boat? 80% of people say yes. I go, okay, have you ever experienced seasickness? Now, about 70% of the people say, yeah, I have. I go, is it awful? They're like, it's the worst feeling ever. I'm like, do you feel like you're going to die? They're like, 100%. I'm like, did you ever think of jumping off the boat and swimming for shore? They're like, no, that's stupid. I'm like, sometimes life can be a little nauseating, right? So we don't quit. So you can stay on the boat because you know this too shall pass. So have faith that you can get through the day. And every time I tell that story to someone detoxing, they're like, oh, yeah, I can. You're right. If I just sit in this long enough, it'll pass. And it passes because what we focus on expands. See, all I do in the world is I see opportunity. I just see opportunity. I don't see obstacles. If something goes one way, I go the next. I'm always pivoting. So if I'm dealing with pain with my colliders, I sit in it. It's going to pass. And it's the same with addiction. You just got to sit in it and write it out.
I think that's very powerful. So hopefully someone will take your advice tonight if they find that they're struggling and take that first step. And then I also want to give some advice for families, because there's some individuals who aren't there and their families see that they're struggling. And you have been doing countless interventions, more than a decade of doing interventions. What is the hard truth that families need to know, and what can they do?
Okay, so addiction is a family disease, and there's always trauma, and it's part genetic, part environment. Families, when people tell me, they go like, we tried an intervention on Johnny, and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work. They're like, why? And I'm like, first of all, Johnny. I'm an expert. I am going to see your family dynamic, right? I'm going to see the forest from the trees. So I can zoom out and see the dynamic and figure out different things. So family systems are very difficult. But you as a family cannot be codependent. See, I sit down in interventions and I draw bottom lines. They've got a kid using fentanyl, living in the house, using the credit card, and the family's afraid, yeah, but if I don't, he'll go on the street and die. I'm like, well, what you're doing is you're being codependent. You're not supporting their recovery. You're supporting their disease and their addiction. So you can't let someone sick and suffering abuse themselves under your roof and think they're going to get better. That's why you call an expert. And then I come in and I'm very loving and kind, and we put together a family meeting and a structure. But once we get the person in treatment, that's when the work begins. And there's usually people in the dynamic that have to do work on themselves. Otherwise, the cycle continues. So the only way to break the addiction cycle is to have the courage to look at your defects of character and work through them as a family, if you want to have a family that's cohesive. Because I know addicts. I left my family of origin. My son has only seen my parents once. I protect him from anyone toxic. You can't. I advocate for my son. You get in my son's way, there's an issue, because I don't want that trauma spread on him. So, excuse me. You have to be, as a family, you have to put your hand up for help. You have to surrender. You don't have to be shame. It's not shameful to ask for help. And you have to be honest, like you've hit a wall. You can't have an addict in your house acting like a maniac and think that's okay behavior. It doesn't get better,
And I think the last question I want to ask you before we announce some great news about Addiction Talk, for people who feel like it's too far, I'm too far gone. I know you've worked with a lot of people. I'm too far gone. My family member's too far gone. Nothing is ever going to change for me. What do you say to those people? Because I know you've seen people that probably their family thought they would never change, or even individuals that's like, I've been drinking for decades. I can't envision a life any different than this.
Well, that's a complete lie. And I would say to them, go to the the last season of Intervention, and watch Garrett and Chantel. The four of them, Garrett and Chantel were a couple, and Adrian and Lane were their best friends living in a crack house in Omark. They had Narcan hanging from the ceilings, and they said that we had to get four of them into treatment, and they said it was impossible. They're 2 years sober now. 2 years sober. And Chantel and Garrett have a kid, Nate, and I just told them the truth. I realized, look, anyone can get sober. Here's the thing. If someone is suffering from very bad mental health issues, like schizophrenia or bipolar, that's serious stuff. You need to, I don't intervene when it's like that. I bring in a really good therapist, a really good clinician. Do you know what I mean? A doctor, because that person is going to have the right combination of medication and, to get them in a position where we can work on their sobriety, right? To get them a baseline. But if you're dealing with someone that's dealing with trauma and they feel like they're too far gone, you can start fresh. Everyone can stop for today and work from there. And anyone that says they can't, that's not true. That is not true. Anyone can start again. You can reset anytime you want. And you don't know how your life's going to end, but why end it like that? Like, why be miserable? Why be tired? People are afraid to live. You get sober, you start living again. You start tasting things. You smell the air. Everything's amazing. Doesn't matter what I'm going through. It's all good. I figure it out because I'm sober. So life, I'm not numb. I'm not trying to block my feelings. It's a beautiful gift. And that's why I work so hard to give back, because I know when people catch it, it's like, oh my God. So yeah, it's really special.
Mm-hmm. And also what's really special, Mike, is that you are going to be joining us as the co-host of Addiction Talk. Woo woo. So we're really excited because you've touched so many lives, and to have your expertise on Addiction Talk as our co-host, we're going to be bringing in all types of guests, celebrities, people you've worked with, even from A&E that you may have seen on the show. We're going to bring those guests in, see where they are now. So we just have lots of content and insight and stories that we're going to be sharing with people. And so we're really excited. So stay tuned. This is just the beginning. And Mike, I just want to thank you for always being so vulnerable, always being an inspiration, and to really understand your story. It just makes me appreciate you even more, because even against the odds, even against all that you went through, you are now in a mission of changing lives. And if you can do it, so can anyone else that is watching tonight.
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely. I know you're going to round it out for us. Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to thank you, because you're such a good soul. You are such a great human. And from the day we met, like, you're a beautiful soul. You really are. And I just love working with you. And it's just every day, like, I just think of just the team we have. But you, seriously, I mean, you and Nate. Hey, look, I'm a diamond. Diamonds are created through a lot of like intensity, and you mash it up and they shine. That's my journey. Your joy. You really are. You're just such a beautiful joy to be around. So I just wanted to give you that as well. And I don't know if anyone's told you how awesome you are today. Well, I'm telling you, you're awesome, because you are. So thank you always for being there for me.
I appreciate that. And that's just what we've created here at American Addiction Centers. And we hope that all of our patients and anyone that comes in contact with us, whether you're at Desert Hope Treatment Center or any of our other facilities, that they feel that love, because we really do care and we are passionate. It is a calling for every single person that works with us. It's a calling about what we do, and even sharing these stories through Addiction Talk. So we look forward to even more stories of inspiration and hope. And that's going to do it for another episode of Addiction Talk. Next time, Mike will be with us as our co-host.